The dying star's galaxy was sick, not in a way anyone could touch or cure, but in a way that was slow, invisible, and terrifying. One by one, suns were going dark. Bright golden giants, white blazing dwarfs, even massive blue stars that had burned for millions of years. They were dying in silence. Worlds that had once been warm and alive were now frozen spheres drifting in the black. No one knew why, no one knew how, but the number of dead stars grew every month for most people. It was just another far-off tragedy, a thing to watch on the news, to shake their heads at, and then forget while eating dinner. But for Captain Arlen Voss, it was personal. He had been there the day his homeworld's sun had flickered and died. He had watched from orbit as the oceans froze and the cities below turned into dark, lifeless shapes. He had heard the screams of millions trying to escape, and he had felt the helpless rage of a man who could do nothing. That was 10 years ago. Since then, Arlen had drifted from one job to another: smuggler, cargo pilot, sometimes even mercenary. He had no home now, no flag, and no loyalty except to his crew and his ship, the Nomad's Light. It was an old freighter with patched-up hull plating and engines that always seemed one day away from breaking down. But it flew, and for Arlen, that was enough. Then came the signal. It was faint, broken, almost swallowed by the static of deep space. It had been found by a relay station on the edge of the Perseus arm, drifting from a dead star system where every planet was now nothing but ice and stone. The message contained no words, only a sound. It was music, a strange, haunting melody that seemed to echo inside the listener's mind. No one could translate it. No one could explain it. But there were whispers among the deep space traders. They spoke of the Star Weaver, an ancient being older than the oldest star charts. They said it could weave light back into dying suns, spinning energy like silk between its hands. It was a myth, a story told to children who asked why stars sometimes went dark. But in a dying galaxy, myths had power, and if the Weaver was real, it might be the only hope left. Arlen didn't believe in myths, but the song in that signal, it was different. When he heard it for the first time, he felt something in his chest, a pull, like a hand gripping his heart. It was not just music. It felt alive, as if it was calling to him. He tried to ignore it, but each night, as he lay in his cabin staring at the ceiling, he would hear it again, faint and soft. He asked his crew about it, only to admit they could hear it too. The others just shook their heads, saying he needed more sleep. But Arlen knew he wasn't imagining it. One night, he stood at the bridge window, looking out into the starfield. Far away, he saw a faint cluster of dying suns, their light dim and weak. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, with a slow breath, he said, "Plot a course to the source of that signal." The navigator hesitated. "Captain, that's in the Dead Belt," she said. The Dead Belt, a region where hundreds of stars had gone dark, leaving behind frozen worlds and derelict ships drifting in eternal night. No sane pilot went there, but Arlen was already turning the ship toward the coordinates. As the Nomad's Light began its long jump into the void, the crew moved about in uneasy silence. Outside, the stars stretched into long lines of white before vanishing entirely. In the dark corridors of the ship, the hum of the engines seemed to mix with the faint melody of the signal. And somewhere deep inside, Arlen knew this was no ordinary journey. He was chasing something more than a myth. He was chasing the only thing left that might save the galaxy. Far behind them, in the black reaches of space, unseen eyes were already watching. And another ship, larger, faster, and hungrier, had also heard the song. The hunt for the Star Weaver had begun, and not everyone hunting it wanted it to survive. Asterisk, the ghost signal, the Nomad's Light, came out of hyperspace into darkness. Not the natural darkness of deep space, but a heavier kind, the kind that hung over dead stars. Ahead of them was a system that should have been bright, full of golden light, but instead, only a faint blue glow came from a dying sun. Its surface was cracked with dark patches where the fire had already gone out. Around it drifted the remains of a once living system. There were ships here, hundreds of them. Some were tiny shuttles. Others were massive colony vessels. All were silent, drifting slowly in the void like ghosts. Many had holes torn through their hulls, as if something had clawed or burned right through them. Others looked untouched, their lights still flickering faintly. As if waiting for a crew that would never return, Arlen stood at the front of the bridge. His eyes fixed on the wreckage, run a scan. He ordered quietly, the navigators. Fingers danced over the console. No active power sources, Captain. But there's a lot of residual energy. Like something big passed through here, she said. Arlen's jaw tightened. And the signal? He asked. Her eyes flickered to the readings. It's here, stronger now. The melody began to fill. The ship again, soft and haunting. Every note seemed to vibrate in the walls, in the floor. Even in their bones. One of the younger crew members, Kellen, rubbed his temples. It's in my head. He muttered, I can see something. Like threads of light. Another crewman shot him a sharp look. Don't talk like that, he said. It's just noise. But it wasn't noise. It was calling them deeper into the graveyard. Arlen ordered the engines to idle as they drifted. Between the wrecks, the ship's lights swept over broken hulls, revealing alien markings burned into the metal. Some were jagged symbols. Others looked like spirals and stars. The engineer, Mara, frowned as she studied them through the viewing. Green, I've seen marks like that in old archive scans. They're warnings, she said. Warnings for what? Kellen asked. Mara shook her head. They're too old. The language isn't fully known. But it's not good. Something moved at first. It was just a flicker in the shadows between two wrecks. Arlen narrowed his eyes. Run the scanners again. He ordered. The navigator did. But the screen showed nothing. No life signs. No energy signatures. Could have been debris, she said, but Arlen didn't believe it. The movement had been deliberate. Like something watching them. The melody grew louder. It was no longer faint. Now it seemed to wrap around them, threading into every sound on the ship. Mara looked uneasy. This isn't coming from a single point, she said. It's everywhere, like it's inside. The whole system. Kellen gripped the edge of his console. Captain, I think it's trying to guide us. Arlen didn't answer right away. Part of him wanted to turn around, to leave this place and never look back. But something in that song, the same pull he'd felt before, kept him rooted. Finally, he said, follow it. The Nomad's light glided deeper into the graveyard, passing the twisted frames of ships from a dozen different worlds. Some still bore the flags of the Earth fleet. Others carried markings from alien empires long thought extinct. The farther they went, the colder the light from the dying sun became. Eventually, the melody changed. It quickened, became sharper, as if urging them to hurry. Then they saw it, at the very edge of the system. Partly hidden by a shattered moon was a single black spire. It rose from the surface of an asteroid, impossibly tall, with no lights, no markings, nothing to show it had ever been built. But the song was coming from it. Arlen's crew stared at it in silence. What is that? Callan whispered. Mara's voice was low, almost afraid. If the legends are true, that's one of the Wayfinders. Arlen's hands tightened on the console. The Wayfinders were another myth, ancient beacons said to guide those worthy toward the Star Weaver. But like the Weaver, they were supposed to be nothing more than stories. Now, one stood before them, real and silent in the dark, and somewhere deep in his chest, Arlen felt the song pulling him forward. The forbidden map Nomad's light left the dead system behind. The Black Spire's location was marked in the ship's log, but there were no clear answers. Only a new direction, a faint energy trail leading toward the edge of known space. If the Spire was truly a wayfinder, then the trail might lead them closer to the Star Weaver. But it also led straight into the outer reaches, a lawless sector where pirate fleets, smugglers, and warlords ruled. They stopped at Harrow's station, a sprawling outlaw port built into the hollowed carcass of an asteroid. The station was a maze of metal corridors, flickering neon signs, and thick crowds of humans and aliens moving shoulder to shoulder. The air smelled of oil, spice, and danger. It was the kind of place where a man could find anything. For a price, Arlen's crew knew they needed help, someone who understood ancient alien navigation. That meant finding the cartographer. They located him in a dim booth at the back of a gambling den. He was a thin, insect-like alien with 6 arms, each covered in glowing tattoos that shifted and changed like living maps. When Arlen explained what they'd found, the cartographer tilted his head. "I know the Spire," he said in a voice like rusted metal scraping. "I know where it points, but the path is not free." Arlen expected a payment demand. Instead, the alien leaned forward, his many eyes glinting. "You want the map. You win it," he said. "What game?" Arlen asked. The cartographer's mandibles clicked. "No game," he replied. "A race." Minutes later, Arlen and Kellen stood at the edge of the station's zero-gravity cargo ring. The challenge was simple. Navigate through the floating maze of containers, moving debris, and laser tripwires. Reach the far beacon and return with a glowing token. The winner would claim the prize. The cartographer's chosen racer was already there, a tall, reptilian alien with sleek armor and a grin full of teeth. The crowd gathered, placing bets. A buzzer sounded, and they launched forward. Arlen's muscles strained as he pulled himself through the floating debris. Twisting and pushing off walls, the reptilian moved faster, darting through narrow gaps. A spinning crate nearly slammed into Arlen's shoulder, but he caught a rail and spun around it. Kellen shouted from the sidelines, "He's ahead. Push it, Captain." Halfway through, a laser trap lit up. Arlen ducked low, narrowly avoiding a beam that would have sent him spinning into the walls. He kicked off hard, flipping through a gap between 2 massive fuel tanks. The reptilian reached the beacon first, grabbing the token, but Arlen had anticipated his path back. With a hard shove, he intercepted him at a choke point, spinning them both in the weightless air. The token floated loose. Arlen snatched it, kicking off toward the finish line. The crowd roared as he crossed first. The reptilian hissed in frustration, slamming a claw into the wall. The cartographer approached, his tattoo map shifting to show new constellations. "You've earned it," he said, handing Arlen a crystalline data shard. Back aboard the Nomad's light, Mara plugged the shard into the nav console. A 3-dimensional map unfolded in the air, a web of star systems connected by glowing threads. At the center was a single point of light, pulsing slowly. "That's it," Mara whispered, the Weaver's supposed location, but the glow was surrounded by red markers. Harrow Syndicate territory. The Harrow were no ordinary pirates. They were a brutal alien faction with fleets of warships, feared for wiping out entire colonies just to make a point. Kellen frowned at the map. "They'll see us coming before we're anywhere near it." Arlen's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure they can't stop us," he said, outside the viewport. Harrow's station was already shrinking into the distance, unseen in the shadows. A Harrow scout ship detached from its hiding place and followed. The crew didn't know it yet, but their path to the Weaver would not be quiet. It had just become a race against something far deadlier than they imagined. Asterisk the Harrow ambush. Nomad's light cut through the blackness of space, its engines burning a steady blue trail. The crew had been running silent since they left Harrow's station, lights dimmed, comms quiet, hoping to slip past any syndicate eyes. But in the outer reaches, hope was rarely enough. Mara sat at the sensor station, scanning the edge of their route. Nothing yet, she said, though her voice carried no comfort. Arlen didn't look away from the forward viewport. They'll come, he said simply. Kellen frowned from the co-pilot's chair. Then maybe we should hit them first. Arlen shook his head. They've got more ships, more guns. If we fire first, we're done. Ours passed intense silence until the moment came. A faint blip appeared on the radar, then another. Then 6 more. Mara's fingers tightened on the console. They're not broadcasting IDs. Harrow. Before anyone could respond, the comm crackled to life. A deep, cold voice filled the bridge. Captain Arlen Voss, turn your ship and hand over the coordinates to the Weaver, or you will not see another sunrise. Kellen's eyes shot to Arlen. They know, he said, his voice low. Arlen kept his tone even. You're wasting your time. We're just traders. The Harrow voice gave a humorless chuckle. Then you won't mind if we search your ship. Outside, sleek black Harrow frigates slid into formation, their spiked hulls glinting in the faint starlight. Each ship bristled with weapon ports, their shapes designed to strike fear even before the first shot was fired. Arlen turned to Mara. How close to the asteroid belt? 5 minutes at full burn, she answered. Get ready to run, he said. The Harrow ships opened fire, blue plasma bolts cutting through the dark. The Nomad's light jolted violently as a blast skimmed its shields holding. But not for long, Mara shouted. Arlen pushed the engines to maximal, the hum of the ship turning into a roar. The Harrow followed, their fire growing sharper. Inside the bridge, warning lights flashed red across every panel. The asteroid belt loomed ahead, massive. Chunks of rock drifting in lazy but deadly orbits. Entering at this speed was suicide, but slowing down meant capture. Arlen's voice was calm but firm. Hold on to something. The Nomad's light dove into the belt, weaving between spinning boulders the size of cities. The Harrow ships followed, but their larger size made them slower to turn. One slammed into a drifting rock, exploding in a flash of blue fire. Another clipped a smaller asteroid, spinning out of control before vanishing into the shadows. Arlen pushed the ship deeper into the maze, using the asteroid's movements to break enemy firing lines. But the Harrow leader's voice returned over the comm. You can't hide in here forever, Voss. Kellen grinned despite the danger. No, but we can make you crash, he muttered. Mara adjusted the ship's thrusters, sending them on a sharp climb over a massive rotating rock. As they cleared it, the last 2 Harrow frigates tried to follow, only to collide with each other in a burst of fire and debris. The comm went silent, breathing hard. The crew held their positions as the Nomad's light slowed. The ship's hull was scorched. One engine was overheating, and the shield generator was down to half power. We can't take another fight like that, Mara said. Arlen nodded. We won't. If we're careful. The asteroid belt began to thin, revealing the pale glow of a distant blue giant star ahead, according to the map. This was the system where the next clue waited, the Starforge. But as the crew stared at it through the viewport, the strange melody returned, louder than before. It wrapped around them like a living thing, guiding them onward. And somewhere in the darkness behind them, far beyond the reach of their sensors, another Harrow fleet had already set its course to intercept. The Starforge ruins, the Nomad's light emerged from the thinning edge of the asteroid belt into a strange calm. Before them hung a massive blue giant star, its light pale and tired, flickering like a candle that had almost burned out. Orbiting close to it was something no one had expected, a colossal, ring-shaped structure, broken in places, but still holding its shape. It was ancient, far older than any known civilization. Its surface blackened and pitted with the scars of time. Mara's voice was barely a whisper. That's the Starforge. The stories described it as a machine built by the first star builders. Beings who could craft suns and worlds with their hands. No one alive had ever seen it, and most thought it was just a myth. But it was here, real and silent. Hanging in the cold light of the dying star, Arlen slowed the ship, circling the structure. Massive spires jutted from the ring like the teeth of a great beast, each one covered in alien markings. Some of the symbols glowed faintly, reacting to the light of the giant star. The haunting melody they had been following was louder here, but it no longer sounded like a song. It was more like a whisper, as if the forge itself was speaking. They found an opening in the outer hall, a jagged tier big enough for the nomad's light to slip through. Inside, the darkness was broken, only by beams of pale blue light filtering through cracks in the walls. The air was thick with floating dust, drifting slowly in the low gravity. They put on their helmets and stepped out, their boots clicking softly on the alien metal floor. As they explored, they passed massive machines frozen in time, their gears and coils silent. Some were bigger than the nomad's light itself. Kellen ran a gloved hand over one of the walls. "It's warm," he said, surprised. Mara scanned it with her wrist device. "There's still power running through here," she said. "Not much, but enough to keep some systems alive." They reached a central chamber, a vast circular space lined with carved panels. The carvings told a story in images, a great being weaving threads of light between stars, making them shine. Then another image showed the same being cutting threads, letting the stars die. Kellen stared at it. "So the weaver can save stars, but also kill them?" Mara nodded slowly. "Looks like it chooses which ones live and which ones die." Before they could study further, a deep metallic thud echoed through the chamber. Lights flickered overhead, and the sound of boots on metal grew closer. Arlen's hand went to his sidearm. "They found us," he muttered. From the shadows emerged Harrow Syndicate soldiers, their black armor reflecting the blue light of the star. At their front was a tall, scarred alien with sharp, bone-like ridges across his head. "Commander Vark." His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with greed. "Step away from the walls." "Captain Voss," he said, "that knowledge belongs to the Syndicate now." Arlen didn't move. "You don't even know what you're dealing with," he said. Vark smiled coldly. "Oh, I know. And I know that whoever controls the Weaver controls the galaxy." Blaster fire erupted, echoing through the chamber. Arlen and his crew took cover behind a massive pillar as bolts of blue energy seared the air. Mara shouted over the noise, "We can't fight them all." Arlen scanned the room, his eyes locking on a narrow side passage. "Fall back." "This way," he ordered. They sprinted through the passage, the Harrow in pursuit. The melody in Arlen's head grew sharper, faster, pulling him towards something. The corridor opened into another chamber, smaller, but with a great arch of glowing threads at its center. The threads shimmered with colors that no human eyes had ever seen. Arlen felt his breath catch. This is leading to the Weaver," he said. Behind them, Vark's voice echoed, "You can't run forever." "Voss?" Arlen didn't answer. He stepped into the arch, and the world dissolved into light. Asterisk the Weaver's chamber light swallowed everything. For a moment, Arlen felt weightless, as if he were falling through a sky with no end. Colors swirled around him, not just the colors he knew, but shades and patterns his mind struggled to name. He felt warmth, and then a deep vibration in his chest, like the hum of a living star. When the light faded, he stood on a smooth, endless surface that reflected the glow of a million tiny threads, each thread stretched into the distance, connecting one bright point to another. Some points blazed like fresh suns, others flickered weakly, and some hung dark and cold, their threads severed. It was not a room, not a place. It was something bigger, something alive, and at its center floated the Weaver. It was vast, larger than any ship Arlen had ever seen. Its body shimmered like liquid light, shifting between shapes, sometimes like a great winged figure, sometimes like a vast spider weaving an invisible web. Its face was a mask of pure starlight. Faceless yet filled with presence, threads flowed from its many arms, each one glowing with the energy of suns. A voice filled Arlen's head, not spoken words, but meaning. "You have followed the song," it said. Arlen felt his knees weaken. "You're real," he whispered. "I am what you call the Weaver," the voice replied. "I have kept the galaxy in balance for longer than your kind has walked its worlds." Arlen's eyes moved across the glowing threads. "You make the stars burn again?" he asked. The Weaver's voice carried a weight of both pride and sorrow. "Yes. And I end them when they must end." Arlen's brow furrowed. "Why kill them at all? Why let worlds die?" The Weaver's form shifted, threads rippling like waves. "Because there is a hunger in the dark," it said, "an ancient shadow that feeds on the light of stars. If it finds too much light in one place, it comes and it devours. By ending some, I save the rest." The thought made Arlen's stomach tighten. "And now?" he asked. The Weaver's voice grew sharper, urgent. "Now the shadow is awake again. It moves through the void even now. I have slowed it, but my strength fades. The Harrow seek me because they think they can control me, but they would only hasten the end." Arlen thought of Commander Vark and his warships. If they reached this place, they'd use the Weaver to burn the galaxy's enemies. No star would be safe. The Weaver's threads shimmered. "You can help me, Arlen Voss," it said. "Merge with me, become my hands and eyes where I cannot go. Your kind is unpredictable, and sometimes that is what saves a galaxy." Arlen's chest tightened. "Merge. What happens to me?" "You will no longer be only human," the Weaver replied, "but you will still be you. You will see the galaxy as I see it. You will feel every star's light in your heart, and you will carry the power to defend them." Before Arlen could answer, a deep rumble shook the endless space. Dark threads began to spread from the edges, threads that absorbed light instead of giving it. The Weaver's voice became urgent. "The shadow comes. You must choose now." Arlen's mind raced. He thought of his crew, of the frozen worlds he'd seen, of his own home turned cold and silent. If he walked away, maybe he could live a few more years as a man, but the galaxy would keep dying, star by star, until nothing was left. The dark threads crept closer, swallowing points of light one by one. Somewhere beyond them, Arlen thought he heard a distant roar, not of a creature, but of something vast and endless. He took a breath. "I'll do it," he said. The Weaver's threads reached for him, wrapping around his arms, his chest, his head. The light grew blinding again, and as it filled him, he felt the pulse of 1,000 suns beating in his veins, far away, in the physical world. The chamber inside the Starforge shook as if a great storm had erupted. And on the other side of the gateway, Commander Vark stepped through with his soldiers, only to see Arlen standing there, his eyes now burning like twin stars. The choice that shapes the Galactic chamber trembled. Light spilled from Arlen's body in rippling waves, wrapping around him like armor woven from living stars. He could feel the Weaver inside him, not as a voice in his head, but as a part of him. Every heartbeat was now the pulse of suns. Every breath carried the weight of constellations. Commander Vark froze at the sight, his soldiers hesitating behind him. "What are you?" Vark demanded, his voice sharp but tinged with fear. Arlen's eyes burned like molten gold. "I'm what you can't control," he said, his voice echoing with both his own tone and the Weaver's. Vark snarled and raised his weapon. "Kill him." The Harrow soldiers opened fire, bolts of blue energy screaming across the chamber. But the shots never reached him. The light around Arlen bent, threads twisting to absorb the blasts with a single gesture. He pulled the weapons from their hands, sending them clattering to the floor. The Weaver's voice spoke through him. "Leave this place. Live, if you can." But Vark wasn't done. He lunged forward with a blade of dark metal, its edge absorbing the light around it. Arlen caught it in his bare hand, the metal sizzling against the energy flowing through him. With a twist, he shattered it into shards. "This ends here," he said. From above, a deep vibration shook the chamber. The dark threads of the shadow had reached the edges. They coiled and twisted like living serpents, reaching for the chamber's heart. The Weaver inside Arlen stirred. "We must act now, or this star will fall." Arlen closed his eyes and reached out with his new senses. He felt the dying blue giant above them, felt its weak heartbeat, the fading fire at its core. With the Weaver's power, he touched its thread, weaving light back into it. The star flared, growing brighter, pushing the darkness back. The shadow recoiled, its tendrils retreating from the surge of light. But it wasn't gone. Arlen knew it was still out there, waiting, hungry. This battle had been won, but the war for the galaxy's light had only begun. Vark stumbled back, shielding his eyes from the blazing glow. "This isn't over, human." He spat before retreating through the gateway with his surviving soldiers. Arlen let him go. Some enemies were meant to live, so they could see what they could never defeat. As the danger faded, the chamber calmed. The glowing threads around Arlen loosened, but the connection remained. He was still himself, but more. He could feel stars across the galaxy, some burning bright, some flickering, some on the edge of death. And he could feel the Weaver's quiet presence within him, guiding, watching. "You are the first of your kind to carry this burden," it said. "Do not fail them." Back aboard the Nomad's light, the crew stared in shock as Arlen stepped through the gateway. Kellen took a step back. "Captain, what happened to you?" Arlen smiled faintly, though his eyes still blazed. "Just call me a caretaker." "Now," he said. Mara frowned. "What about the Harrow?" "They'll come again. They can try." Arlen replied, "But now we're ready." As the ship lifted from the Starforge, the revived blue giant burned brighter than it had in centuries. Its light spilled into the void, reaching frozen worlds that hadn't seen warmth in generations. Somewhere far away, refugees looked up at their skies and saw a dawn they thought would never come. Arlen stood at the viewport, watching the star's light stretch into the dark. The Weaver's voice was quiet now, one thread restored. "Many more to save." Arlen nodded to himself. "Then let's get to work," he said. The Nomad's light turned toward the endless black. The hunt for the Star Weaver was over, but the hunt for the galaxy's survival had just begun.